Liverpool, after coming out the care system, me and my mate Ray Lake, who ended up being in a band called the Real Thing. Ray and I were we'd come out the care system, and then we knocking around on the in Toxteth, and one day Ray said to me, he was we were going down the road, and we were looking up at this balcony with there was a woman and a young girl there, and Ray turned around to me and said, "See that girl over there?" I went, "Yeah." He said, "That's your younger sister."
Oh, wow.
You see, and I thought, like, oh, I've only got one sister who was in the homes with us, and different homes and all that. And I thought, where's that come from? But apparently he knew. Basically, he introduced me to my second sister, she was adopted by this family when she was when I was 2 years old. So do you know what I mean? So I'm totally aware that my mum had another baby after me. Do you know what I mean? So and Ray, my mate, who was in the kids' homes with me, as I say, we used to knock around together, and Ray started knocking around with another friend of his, who was never in the homes, but they managed to sort of do all this acapella group singing and stuff. And me and my foster brother Ben and his friend Alvin, we decided we were going to do acapella as well. It all started off when we went to this working building site in Hull, of all place, Immingham, and there was loads of Irish workers and everything else on this site, and we were red leading the insides of these big containers, like oil containers or gas containers, and of a night time there was no entertainment or anything else. Do you know what I mean? And so a lot of the black guys that came from Toxteth, who went on this working thing, it was like a work experience. You can get 40 quid a day, it was, basically, called Manpower. And they started singing these songs, acapella and all that, and I got up on stage with them, and I had to do this ooh, and the song turned out to be So In Love by the Times, and that's probably got me into musicals and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? I loved doing acapella, and in fact, years later, I was trying to do it with Larry, my mate Larry, who, another actor friend of mine, and we tried to sort of kick it off again. I do like that old singing, if you know what I mean. Watching the old black and white footage of these groups, like the Platters and stuff. Only you, Because when I was actually in the homes or in foster parents, I was in trouble all the time. Do you know what I mean? I was getting up to all sorts, But every time I knew that I was in for a good hiding, I'd be sort of walking back. It's like walking towards a doom. Do you know what I mean? When you get home, because if the teachers reported you, you're going to get it when you get home off your foster parents or whoever they were. And I remember at one time, I'm sort of walking towards this. It sort of reminded me of the Richard Pryor, when his mum tells him to go and get a whipping stick, to beat himself up with, you know what I mean? And you think it's like the longest walk home. Do you know what I mean? You stay behind to sort of to clean the backboard, miss, you know what I mean? Anything to not go home. Do you know what I mean? It's your longest walk. And for some unknown reason, the sun was always shining. Do you know what I mean? And, when you're that small, summers last for years, if you know what I mean. Sunny days last a year, and there I was, sort of knowing that I was going to get a good hiding when I got back to me foster parents, for this something I'd done at school or whatever, And there I am singing, whistling to myself, Walking Back to Happiness, by, what was her name? Helen Shapiro, Walking Back to Happiness, listening to all sorts of those sort of songs. And all those songs, everything. I was listening to the Beatles, Terry and the Pacemakers, all the Liverpool sound and everything else while I was at school. And all those songs, they seemed to get me through my hard times, if you know what I mean. Not like hard times, but, if I was going to be punished or get the cane or something like that, do you know what I mean? There was always these songs which would sort of like block out the hurt, or, block out this, block out that, you know what I mean? Just whistle to yourself, and all these lovely songs of the 60s, really. So, yeah. Music played a lot, like, in my life, if you know what I mean. Or it's got me out of bad moods, or, or has got me thinking about things. When we was at this working place, it was called Manpower, right? And we went to this place, like employment office sort of thing. And they took us all off to Immingham. A big gang of us from Toxteth, we all went, a load of black guys, and we were obviously mixing with all the Irish workers as well, and in this big place, in the canteen and everything else. But as I say, there was no entertainment. And I had a record player, and I was always playing music anyway, buying singles and stuff like that. And I'd asked my friend, who lived a couple of doors away from me in Toxteth, in this road, I said, when you come up next week, bring my record player up. Do you know what I mean? So because he was going to join us on the workforce sort of thing. And he brought the record player up anyway. And I had all my singles, my soul songs and everything else. And then this other guy, another black guy, came in. He'd gone into town, and he bought this album. And it was like bright red and yellow and a big hair sort of thing, And he put this sound on, right? He put this record on. He said, you got to listen to this, And it was the song was called Coloured Spade, which like Peter Straker sang it originally on the album, and he was the original Hood in Hair. And it's all about, the song goes, I am a coloured spade, a nigger, a black nigger, a jungle bunny, and all that. Do you know what I mean? So it's basically a sort of like a Serrano de Bergerac. Do you know what I mean? When he says like, oh, you want to call me Long Nose? I'll give you some other names you can call me. Do you know what I mean? So that's what this song was about. In this musical, Hair, it was all about the anti-Vietnam War and all that sort of business. Yeah, and he comes along in this, and he says, you got to listen to this. Now, I threw it off once he started playing it. I went, hey, I'm not having that on my record player, do you know what I mean? And I threw it off. I said, I'm not having all that, talking about, nigger this and nigger that and whatever. Do you know what I mean? But it turned out, as I say, a year later, I'd gone for an audition for this musical, and still not knowing what the part was. But when I did eventually get it, I started to rehearse with everybody. Do you know what I mean? And that was the song I had to sing. I was beginning to learn about myself, my colour, and, my place in life and whatever, if you know what I mean. I thought, oh, okay, so there's black guys going around doing Serrano de Bergerac. Do you know what I mean? Saying like, yeah, you want to call me a nigger? You want to call me a coon? Hey, how about Fuzzy Wuzzy? How about this? How about that? You know what I mean? And you think, wow, and that way you own it. Because when I was in the care system, I was brought up on the Beatles, Terry and the Pacemakers and all that sort of business. And the very first time we were sitting down cross-legged in front of the telly, me and my mate Ray Lake, and we saw this band on there was a program called Thank You Lucky Stars, and this band came on, five black guys, and they broke out into this number, Baby I Don't Care, and it just blew us away. But years later, that band, they were known as the Chants. Okay. Do you know what I mean? And Eddie Amu was one of the singers in the Chants, right? So that's as we were growing up in the care system. Now, when Ray and I came out of the care system, the chance was sort of like, not dwindling, but, sort of like, new music was coming onto the scene and everything else. And Eddie, out of the chance, his younger brother, Chris, was starting to get his own group together. And that's where my mate Ray joined Chris. And that they eventually became The Real Thing. So there's a history there of like the both of us in children's homes seeing this black group on the telly open wide and like, wow, you don't see many black back then, to see a black singer on, you thought, wow, but like to see this black group. And funny enough, that group, like The Chance, they were like, the Beatles were backing them in the cavern. I've just done a documentary on the Real Thing. Only because, like, I had, as I say, my friend Ray. Years later, he died. He chasing a dragon, and but like, and I was always in touch with them when I was obviously in Hair and Superstar and stuff like that. And I was always tripping back up to Liverpool and everything, and catching up with Ray and everybody. And the rest of the band would say, "Oh, we're worried about Ray. We're worried about Ray. Why does he behave? Why does he behave like that? You know what I mean? And I've always put it down to like the way we were brought up in the care system. Some of them got fairly treated well, some of them didn't. Do you know what I mean? And I could sort of explain it all to them. Why he was like the rebellious one, if you know what I mean, out of the thing. So it's like friends you've lost along the way, if you know what I mean, who you were grown up with. And the music's sort of like whatever it is. It doesn't have to be soul music or what. It's whatever that gets you at your time, your emotions, and all that. Songs that have pulled me through over the years. Going for interviews for jobs and not getting them and all that. And one point I got so depressed, like, of going for all these interviews for jobs and stuff like that. This is before Fools and stuff, but I was getting really depressed, and one day I said, right, that's it, I'm going to sort this out, and I went to the makeup shop. And I got this like white pan stick sort of makeup, and I thought, I'll do that, And it was quite sad, really, because I thought, oh, what's going on? Because my girlfriend came in the door, and as soon as she saw me, she just fucking burst out crying, man. You know what I mean? And I thought, oh, man, no. What are you doing, Paul? You just fucking wait. It'll come. When I first started, as I say, came out of the musical, Hair and that, I thought, oh, I'll get a job as a stage manager in Derby, and I was messing around there. And then they rang me up and said, do you want to come into the West End Hair, at Shaftesbury Avenue? And it was from there that I auditioned for Superstar. Then I met another new group of friends, in Superstar and all that. When I met my mate Larry then, so... yeah, but I mean, I was like, before that, I as I say, it was almost like blacking up, wasn't it, really? But whiting up to get a part. And I thought, oh, God, this is sad, Barber, get a grip, I was learning, and the music was changing as well, when I first joined show business and all that. Richard O'Brien was introducing me to rock and roll, for Christ's sake, which I'd been brought up on in the 50s anyway, on the radio, So I knew, but Richard was like, reviving it all again. Got us all singing rock and roll songs and stuff like that, And then, as I say, you're talking 1970, and then you get like Curtis Mayfield, Move On Up. Do you know what I mean? I bought that album in Manchester. I was on tour. I was buying records when I was on tour and albums, and my collection was getting bigger by the end of the tour. I've got a serious vinyl collection at home. It's not as big as some people's, but, Marvin Gaye. You know, you've got to have Marvin Gaye. I remember being in Superstar, but I'd driven up to Liverpool. You know, back in the day, me and Larry, we could leave the car outside of the stage door of the Palace Theatre. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you think, wow, this is like 1970, 72. Do you know what I mean? And like we just jump in the car like after the second show on a Saturday night, and like, you know, London, Liverpool, 2.5 hours, mate, in a Jag. You know what I mean? Black guys always had Jags. You know, Larry could drive like, you know, and we'd be in a nightclub in Liverpool. You know, and I remember going there, you know, in Liverpool and listening to this, because a lot of the clubs that I went to, like, you know, good black soul clubs and stuff like that, but they played the whole album.
Okay.
And it was the first time I'd heard, like, you know, Marvin Gaye's What's Going On, you know, and ended up crashing out in the club, you know, and waking up at home in my bed in Liverpool. And it was my sister's boyfriend had taken me home, you know, and you know what I mean, I found myself back. So there was good things going on, if you know what I mean. But like Marvin Gaye, I thought, wow. I was thinking like, well, summer, you know, songs that conjure up summertime and all that would be for me Heat Wave, you know, Martha Reeves and the Vandellas. You know what I mean? It was always hot and sunny and like knocking around Liverpool Lake Toxteth and all this. You know, this was well before the riots and all that, and it was nice. You know, everybody you spoke to, it was nice community and everything else, you know. I remember coming home one day, I'd been to Nems, the music shop, Brian Epstein, you know, he was like the manager of the EMI shops in Liverpool. And I remember going down there because I'd heard this record by the Four Tops, Reach Out, I'll Be There. Do you know what I mean? So I ran down to the record shop and I bought me record, you know, and I was walking all the way back to Tuxteth again. And there was another guy who used to be in our school, and his dad was like, you know, his dad owned a hotel. Do you know what I mean? And this kid in our school, you know, his dad used to provide the lemonade and the pop and everything else at the end of term, you know, for the whole class. Do you know what I mean? And so he was obviously well off, this kid, you know. And I'm walking back with my record, you know, ready to play it on my record player. And he confronts me, you know, he says, what have you got there? I said, oh, I've just got the new Four Tops, man. He said, I'll have it off you now. And all that. I said, oh man, I've just been to fucking Nems all the way to get this, you know. Like, he said, I'll give you double the money for it.
Oh, really?
He was just a lazy bastard, basically, you know what I mean? And he gave me about 10 bob for it, for a 2 and 6 record, you know. So I went, okay, you know, so I had to plod all the way back to, because he was just too lazy to go to the shop and get it himself. Oh, you know.
I was going to monkey for a second. He didn't
No, he wasn't going to. No. We were great, mate, you know. But yeah, no, it's just, that's the sort of thing, you know, the life it was in Liverpool. It was a nice time, you know.
Were you around then for the riots as well? Were you still living in Liverpool when the Toxteth riots happened?
No, I was on tour in Hare. No, I was on tour doing Jimmy Riddle, which was a one-man play. Called Jimmy Riddle, which was all about a union guy based on Derek Robinson, the Leyland. He was a union leader, and they called him Red Robbo. You know, like they call him Red Ken, Red Ken Livingston. And this guy was the first one to be called Red Robbo. You know, he was a union guy and fighting for his union in Liverpool, you know, the motor trade and stuff. I think it was Leyland he was in Liverpool. And he ended up sort of like alone, and his wife had left him and all that, you know. Basically it's what the system had done to him, you know, and the media had done to him, you know. They'd ruined him, you know, called him Red this, Red that and all that, and he was only fighting for his workers and stuff, you know. But And that's where you get the beginning of the, the union bashings and all that, and then Maggie Thatcher came in the late 70s and stuff, and, that was it. You thought, oh, well, that's where it's going. But, you didn't think of it at that time. You're only a teenager doing those early sort of like socialist type plays which have got something to say,
Yeah.
And yes, and so I was on tour in Birmingham, and I was watching it on the television in me digs, the riots in Liverpool, yeah. And that famous cinema there, which got burnt down. And I used to go there when I was a kid to see all the matinees, all the cowboy films and stuff like that. And that was a real landmark in Liverpool 8 Toxteth, But, the politics of it all, the reason it got burnt down was because, it sort of ceased to be a cinema, and some furniture guy got hold of it, and turned it into a furniture place called Swain Banks, and all this. And then he was like, not employing black kids who were in the area and stuff, So they thought, well, sod you, mate, you're going, And plus, they decided to, what did they do? They decided to a drive-through NatWest, bank. Right next to the old cinema as well, So, and that was totally useless in the middle of Toxteth.
Yeah. It's not really helping the community.
Nobody had bank accounts, if you know what I mean, and whatever. So, that went. So, but yeah. So, growing up in Liverpool was like, it was nice. So long as I didn't lose I felt I'd lost a lot of childhood, having to grow up fast in certain a few situations there, and not realising until years later, and think, oh, that was what was going on, or that, and you think, oh, okay. Now I started to think about what was going on then, and I wanted to put it in, from, living at home with my mum in Toxteth, and then her getting ill and everything else. And even then, when, at the age, before I was 7, I was listening to music on the radio. Do you know what I mean? I was, it was like Bill Haley and, Rock Around the Clock and all that. And there was all sorts of music coming out of this radio. I remember climbing up on the sideboard, and looking behind the radio to see where all these voices, people lived. Do you know what I mean? That was I was thrown into this world of something there, and the voices and everything else. And so, yeah, that's what sort of brought me through, really. Because I got no pictures of my mum or anything. And, like, I wish I did. I wish I did, some friends say, oh, you should go on Who Do You Think You Are? The BBC will do all the work for you, you know what I mean? I said, no, I don't know, but, I still have this, as you say, the one image in your head, but as you say, it's fading. When I was leaving the care system, and the guy, Mr. Culshaw, who said, here's your papers to sign and everything else, to go into the Merchant Navy.
Yeah.
It was that choice he gave me. He said, before you sign, let me just remind you, you've been brought up in the care system, Paul. You've done this, you've done that. You've been told to shut up. You've been told, you've been institutional. You've been in an institution since the age of 7, basically. And that, you're 18 now. You know what I mean? If you sign this paper and go in the Merchant Navy, you're going to be in another institution. Do you know what I mean? And it's like there's only so many portholes there, and you're miles at sea and everything else. Plus, no girls. What? Oh, fuck that. No, Jesus, no. You take the pen, bro. You can have that. I'm going to take me chances on land. Do you know what I mean? And it was the first time I thought, actually, this is a guy that's looking out for me. Do you know what I mean? Because like there was loads of kids coming out the care system that were going straight into crime. They didn't know what to do. That's what happened to me. Didn't know what to do. So as soon as I was only out 5 minutes, and I was in Nick, with my brother Ben, for 2 weeks, and all that. That's but when he gave me that choice, and I said no, and all that. At that time, he said to me, he gave me this record, and it was by Sammy Davis Jr. And he didn't tell me much about it. He just said, "Yeah, Paul, you should listen to this," and it was called "Don't Blame It on the Children," and it's a bit like it's almost like an early rap song because it's half spoken, if you know what I mean. We read in the papers and we hear on the air about killing and stealing and crime everywhere, and very early, like Gil Scott Heronish, poets and stuff. And this was like this song. It was all about don't blame the children. Basically the parents might be to blame for this, for what's going on now. And I just thought, oh, wow, you know what? That is so relevant to what's going on today, with knife crime and all that. And I'm, you're on WhatsApp and all that, and I get all these, lots of friends, and especially black dudes, sending me, conscious type sort of short videos and stuff like that. You know what I mean? And black guy interviewing another black guy saying, what do we do with our kids and all that? And this other guy saying like, well, I'm their father and all that. So I give them this. I target them. I target the young kids at school and all that. And and you think, oh fuck, this is not good. You know what I mean? But it's the truth. I know where I am now. And I'm getting asked to do a lot of interviews. To do with like kids in care and stuff like that. And I'm up for that. You know what I mean? Because my brother went into. When we both came out of prison, I went into here. I got a job. I thought, fuck this, I'm not having this. This is even a worse institution that I've come from. 2 weeks in Risley was enough to say, well, no, I don't like this place. Thank you very much, Gov. I'll be off. And I got a job, over the Christmas period and everything else. And when I came over the Christmas period, I got the job. Oh God, where am I going with this? Basically, I came out and got a job, basically. And it was while I was waiting to be kept on that my brother's friend came along and said, oh, they're holding auditions over at the Empire, you know what I mean? And I said, what the fuck's an audition? He said, oh, you got to go and sing a song and all this sort of business, I said, oh, okay, So we went along to the stage door, and they were just coming out. Frank Mackay, Jimmy Vera, and, what was his name? Oh, God. It's in the book. And they said, oh, we're just leaving, guys, because two of us just standing at the door, the stage door. He said, oh, is it finished? And they said, yeah, we're off to Manchester now. And I said, oh, okay. But then one of them turned around and said, Jimmy Verner, Frank Mackay, and Dave Tagore, the director, choreo. And he said, is the pianist still here? He said, yes, he is. So he said, okay, you guys, come in. So my mate did his audition, sang, and I was just watching him from the side of the stage, And then the director said to me, do you want to have a go? What have I got to do? He said, sing Yesterday. I said, okay, yeah. So when I was rehearsing with my Acapella group, him and my brother, I was always going for the high notes, do up and all that. You know what I mean? But I thought, this is not going to happen on this one for Yesterday. My voice just went like, yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away. And luckily, it was in tune. And he went like, oh, can you come back to Manchester tomorrow, And we went, yeah, okay, So I'm thinking it's the both of us, you know what I mean? So I go round to my sisters, open that electric meter box, grab all the 5-pence pieces out of there, you know, jump the train the next morning, go over there. And when we got there, the Palace Theatre, from the stage door, there was a queue from stage door all halfway up Oxford Road. And we thought, oh no, man, the guy's taking a piss, you know. So we joined the queue at the end, you know what I mean? And we was only there for about 3 minutes, you know, and then suddenly it was like Paddy Barber, you know, when it was coming up closer to me, Paddy Barber, you know, and it got to the guys in front of us, like, and they went, Paddy Barber, and I said, I'm fucking Paddy Barber. He said, are you Paddy Barber? I said, yes, I'm fucking Paddy Barber. He said, oh, you wanted down the front, mate, you know what I mean? I said, oh, all right, you know, so I come out the queue, went down to the front, and Tagore was waiting there at stage door, saying, oh, Paddy, Gratty, you can make it, come on in. You know, so I did my second audition for it, and that was it.